In this video, we're going to analyze the poem Not My Business. Therefore, this video is going to cover the poem itself, the structure, content analysis, title analysis, language and diction of the poem, and the mood of the poem. The poem Not My Business. They picked Akoni up one morning, beat him soft like clay, and stuffed him down the belly of a waiting jeep. What business of mine is it? So long they don't take the yam from my savoring mouth. They came one night, booted the whole house awake, and dragged Danladi out, then off to a lengthy absence. What business of mine is it? So long they don't take the yam from my savoring mouth. Chinwe went to work one day, only to find her job was gone. No query, no warning, no probe, just one neat sack for a stainless record. What business of mine is it? So long they don't take the yam from my savoring mouth. And then one evening, as I sat down to eat my yam, a knock on the door froze my hungry hand. The jeep was waiting on my bewildered lawn, waiting in its usual silence. About the poem. Not My Business was published in 1990 in Niyi Osundare's collection, Songs of the Season. The poem is Niyi Osundare's way of calling out the oppression that he saw around him and across the country, Nigeria. The satirical tone captures the tyrannical nature of the leadership in Nigeria at the time it was written, and the helplessness and indifference of the people in the face of tyranny. Further to this, the poem is also Niyi Osundare's way of pointing out the selfish nature of humans in the face of other people's suffering. Osundare also uses the poem to educate the public. Structure of the poem. The poem Not My Business has 4 stanzas with 26 lines. The first 3 stanzas have 7 lines each, while the first stanza has 5 lines. The poem is free verse. It has neither meter nor rhyme. The poem uses enjambment, and the first 4 lines in the first 3 stanzas tell a story, while the last 3 lines serve as a refrain. This gives the poem a song-like structure. Stanza 4 continues the story, but leaves the reader to imagine the end as the speaker's situation takes a sharp turn. Content summary. Not My Business by Niyi Osundare is a narrative poem. It speaks of the tendency of humans to keep silent when things go wrong because they believe the consequences do not affect them. As long as they are not the ones wronged, they stay quiet. The poem paints the human case and the often overlooked end. Though the injustice may seem not to affect the silent person one day, it eventually will. The audience is the society, and the aim is to address the prevalent attitude of not caring about what happens to others, especially in Nigeria and other African societies. The message is that what affects one affects others and should be treated as such. People should do something about situations around them, even when they are not the ones affected directly. Keeping silent in the face of tyranny because the tragedies do not affect you directly is discouraged, because next time it may be your turn. The speaker in the poem appears to suffer apathy and described his disinterest and inaction when violence was done to others. His reason for not interfering to help the victims is stated in the refrain. What business of mine is it? So long they don't take the yam from my savoring mouth. He is scared his supply will be stifled if he got involved, and as long as he can keep his benefits, then everything happening is fine. The air of his regret is felt in the end, when the jeep came for him as well. Stanza by stanza analysis. Stanza 1. This stanza paints a picture of a suffering man under a dictator or power within a neighborhood. The men who did the beating are not afraid of being challenged and seem to have the authority to do as they please. Akoni, the man who was beaten, is helpless, and he was beaten soft like clay and was taken away in a jeep. This raises the theme of oppression of the weak by the powerful. They, in stanza 1, refers to the ones in power or their representatives, and Akoni represents the common man who suffers under their power. The common man was picked up, suggesting he was arrested or kidnapped, and the jeep is a symbol of power or wealth, often associated with the upper class in Nigeria. Akoni's survival is uncertain, as suggested by the use of the word "stuffed" to describe how he was placed in the vehicle. The refrain is a rhetorical question. It captures the disinterest and indifference of the speaker, who in this case represents the people who refuse to speak up against negative actions, injustice, or poor leadership because they are not directly affected. The speaker from the description is Akoni's neighbor, who witnessed such a scene early in the morning, but his concern was not the well-being of his neighbor, but that the yam stays in his savoring mouth. Stanza 2. In the second stanza, the harassment takes place in the night, an ominous time and event which the whole house had to experience. In this case, the neighbor, Danladi, was taken away and he was not seen again. The speaker once again uses imagery to paint the situation. Words like booted awake and dragged show the cruelty of the ones in power and the helplessness of the victim. The whole house awoke when the perpetrators arrived, suggesting that the oppression is not done in secret but in the open. People know about it but are unable or unwilling to speak up or do something about it. These violent acts taking place at night with such brazenness shows that the people in power disrupt lives, create terror, and mete out inhumane treatment to the subjects at any time without care. Finally, Danladi was dragged out, then off they went with him to a lengthy silence. This suggests that Danladi may never return, or he was probably murdered and no one heard from him again. Then once again, the speaker repeats the refrain. He is not moved to action, despite multiple people who the poem suggests are his neighbors being harmed. He only cares about his benefits and savory food. Stanza 3. The person who experienced the violence and ill treatment in stanza 3 is Chinwe. The speaker laments the unjust treatment that Chinwe received at work, where she was dismissed without cause. This is captured in lines 17 and 18. No query, no warning, no probe. Just one neat sack for a stainless record. The writer uses the expression stainless record to express how unjust the termination of Chinwe's employment was, as she had done nothing to deserve that. Then again, the speaker repeats the refrain, reinforcing his unwillingness to get involved, seek justice for those unjustly harmed, or take any action whatsoever against the oppressors. Stanza 4. This is the last stanza, and its focus is on the speaker in the poem. This time, the knock came as usual, but it was at the speaker's home. The visitor is unexpected, and the knock is ominous. Interestingly, the knock came At the same time, the speaker was settling down to enjoy his sumptuous meal. This is suggested by lines 23 and 24. As I sat down to eat my yam, a knock on the door froze my hungry hand. The twist of fate in this stanza is almost humorous, though in a dark way. The fear crept up the speaker's spine and heightened as the jeep waited on his lawn. It is obvious that something he had perceived as not his business has become his immediate concern. Lines 25 and 26 confirm that the jeep in his lawn is the same one that picked up Akoni, the same one the speaker has seen many times, and he recognized it at first glance. The jeep was waiting on my bewildered lawn, waiting, waiting in its usual silence. This time, the refrain does not recur. The situation is now at the speaker's doorstep, waiting in silence to envelop him. Final thoughts. The three people who were oppressed, Akoni, Danladi, and Chinwe, represents the three major tribes in Nigeria. This shows that their experience cuts across the nation, and all the tribes feel the same pain. It also shows that the leadership does not care for its people, whatever their tribe. Furthermore, Akoni and Danladi are male, while Chinwe is female. This shows that the oppressors do not care about your gender, they mistreat men and women alike. The reluctance of the speaker to speak up or take any action hinges on two possible reasons based on the refrain of the poem. He is powerless in the face of the harassment and can only seek to save himself. Number 2, he does not care about others but only for his own gains. However, stanza 4 voices whatever excuse the speaker may have for refusing to say something or do something about the oppressive situations his neighbors find themselves in. The lesson, therefore, is that refusing to speak up when one is unjustly oppressed, be it or not your tribe or gender, does not necessarily mean that you are safe. The title, Not My Business. The title reflects the passivity and detachment of the observer in the face of injustice. This highlights the central theme of the poem, injustice, and the pervasive nature of apathy. The title suggests that individuals remove themselves from societal issues when it does not directly affect them. This detachment is often born of the mindset that as long as their personal lives are going as they suppose, what affects others is none of their concern. Considering the title in the light of the author, the nation, and the people, it denotes the writer's critique of the oppression and injustice that people in power meted to the citizens and the indifference of individuals in response to it. To pass the message in a non-violent way, Niyi Osundare chooses a common phrase, "not my business," as the title of the satirical poem. Language and diction. The choice of words contributes greatly to the impact of the poem, "Not My Business." The use of the acceptable everyday language, "not my business," makes the poem more relatable, and the message is easily received by the readers. Secondly, Osundare uses strong verbs to paint the action of they, the powers that be, who oppressed the masses, and the suffering of the citizens under them. Words and expressions like "picked up," "beat him soft like clay," "booted the whole house awake," "dragged," paint vivid images of the situations in the minds of the readers. Lastly, he uses repetition to emphasize the apathy of the observers, the speaker in the poem being one of them. He repeatedly asks, "What business of mine is it?" So long they don't take the yam from my savoring mouth. Mood and tone. The mood of the poem is one of fear, panic, and indifference. The poem opens with the line that picked Akoni up one morning. The writer used "they" to identify the powers that oppress the people, suggesting that everyone is aware of who the powers are and what they are capable of. The people are afraid to name the powers for fear they would catch up to them and come after them too. Secondly, the description of the harm the powers inflict on the victims and their helplessness in the face of adversity also suggests that the perpetrators are much stronger than those they harass, which increases their dread in the face of their oppressors. This is confirmed by the speaker when they came for him in lines 24 and 25. In line 24, a knock at the door froze my hungry hand. Finally, the description of how Akoni was stuffed into the jeep and how the jeep was waiting in silence in the speaker's lawn is ominous. The use of the refrain in the poem highlights the speaker's indifference in the face of oppression and the tone in which it is presented, chilling and detached. This detached perspective of the speaker in the face of injustice also captures a resignation. What they do, not my business. Juxtaposing the serious report on the inhumane acts that they, the powerful, are doing, and the speaker's lack of concern creates a satirical feeling. This therefore causes the reader to contemplate the situation addressed in the poem. What are your thoughts about the poem Not My Business? Please share it in the comments section. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.